All right, guys. So we're back and where I left off. So we've got where we were about teach creationism. So you can't teach creationism in a school. I can tell you what it is, but I can't tell you that it's like the right thing to believe. Okay, you get to make that decision yourself. All right. So what can you actually do? Here you go. You can choose whatever religion lets you want. No one can tell you what you want to pick. That's up to you. You can lead prayer in most examples, so it can be student led prayer like at school. You can ask as many questions about religion as you'd like. You might not always get the answer that you want, but you can ask away. You can worship whoever or whatever you want. Here's what you can't do: you can't break the law and say, but it's my religion. I'm not doing homework because it's my religion. Nope, that's not really a thing. Which brings me to this next one. You can't have kids, or your parents can't say, well, you're not going to school. You have to, in the United States, give kids an education. And you also can't say, well, I'm not going to feed you, or I'm not going to let you stay in the house because it's against my religion. Nope, we have to give you basic needs, have to keep you alive, like we like you or something. Okay. So, freedom of speech. This is the one that everyone thinks of when they think of the First Amendment. It means Congress shall make no laws abridging the freedom of speech. Okay? Basically, I can't stop you from saying things. So you can have any political belief that you want. You can protest. You can say, I don't like this. I protest against homework. Great. You can say that all you like. You can't be violent about it. You can't be out of control about it. You can say things about someone that are true. Weird. You can totally tell the truth. That's allowed. You're allowed to burn the flag. This gets people all fired up. No pun intended. Went all the way to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that this is an acceptable use of freedom of speech. Okay, the point is that people don't like it, and a lot of times that's kind of the point. When people do that, they are saying there's something that they're very opposed to, and that's their form of protest. You can say racist things and hate slogans. So KKK, Nazis, they're allowed to say what they want to say. I have no problem telling you I don't like that. I don't believe in those things. But if you do, you can absolutely say those things, right? Doesn't mean everyone has to like what you say. I don't recommend doing this. It's going to probably get you into trouble, right? So, and again, you can't threaten anybody. All right. So you can, freedom of speech means that you can say something and someone can disagree with you. That's fine. Somebody else can say something that you disagree with. That's fine too. Right. And not everything has to be nice. All right. So if you've ever read the comment section on anything on the internet, you know this last one is true. Okay. So what you cannot do, this is what you probably ought to, stay away from. You can't threaten to blow anything up like airplanes or schools or, the president. But even if you just threaten to blow up me, I'm going to go to the police, and that's probably going to be you getting arrested in some way, shape, or form. So don't do that. That's threatening violence. Cannot sexually harass someone. So you cannot make comments about the way that they look, touch anybody when they don't want you to touch them. There's a whole thing about sexual harassment in our handbook. You want to know more? Look it up. All right, you cannot create too much social chaos. So um, you cannot just go out and start beating people up or knocking on everyone's door and waking them up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You can't be crazy. There we go. We cannot use extremely crude language in a public forum. So you can't go to the zoo with my kids who are 5 and 11 and start swearing up and down where all they hear are cuss words all the time, or say very violent and rude things. That's not allowed. You will be asked to leave. You cannot use disrespectful or vulgar language in schools. Some of you guys are not very good at following this one, and you're actually violating the First Amendment. So when I write you up for it, I'm not just following school rules. I'm actually following, that thing called the Constitution. You cannot do hate crime. So you can say all the racist, hateful things that you like. When you act on it, that's a hate crime, and that carries with it a special punishment. And so you will be arrested when you do something hurtful to someone. And if it's proven that you do it because you dislike women and you did it against a woman, or you did it against someone who is black because you are a racist against blacks, you will face an extra punishment. Okay, because you're not doing it for any reason other than they are who they are. All right, freedom of the press. So this is like the media, social media, newspapers, TV, all that stuff. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press. So you can print any political position. You like this president, you don't like this president, you like the last president, you don't like the last president, you don't like any presidents, you like all the president, whatever. Yes, you can print whatever you like as far as supporting a political position. You can make fun of people, especially politicians, because let's face it, they make it so easy most of the time. You can expose wrongs by the government. So if the government did something wrong, you are absolutely allowed to print, televise, show how that thing went wrong. That's sometimes people call the press the fourth branch of government because they kind of keep an eye and make sure that everybody does what they're supposed to do according to the Constitution, right? And they absolutely in the press can say things you might not agree with. Okay. So, what they cannot do is something called libel. Libel is when you intentionally print something that you know is not true and is going to damage someone's reputation. So, if you said, printed on your social media that Mrs. Tom cussed you out in school one day, and you can't believe that she's getting away with it, and she's just a horrible person. None of that's true, and that's going to damage my reputation about being fair, and I can actually sue you for that. Okay. You cannot disclose defense security secrets. There's something called national security that means keeping our nation safe. You and I don't need to know everything that the government does, and sometimes us knowing puts people at risk or danger. So we can't always know everything right away. And then you cannot detail how to make certain weapons, even online. That becomes illegal. We don't want to hurt less people, not more people. Okay, so those are some basic things that you can and cannot do. All right, freedom of assembly. Congress shall make no law abridging the people to peaceably assemble. So basically means you're allowed to get together with people and you're allowed to protest in a peaceful way. That's why it says right there in the language, peaceably assemble, right? So what you can do, you can protest. I don't like this thing. I think school should be canceled forever. I think right now you guys are probably realizing that you actually like school more than you thought that you did. You can have a parade. Now you have to get a permit because a lot of times they shut roads down and all that kind of stuff, and you don't want anybody to get hurt. And so you go to the town or the city and you get a permit. They say it's okay on this particular day. They shut everything down. People can't park or drive there. And that way everybody can do it peacefully and knows what's up. Okay. So they do this every time we have Heritage Days. You guys see this all the time. You can have a parade while chanting hate slogans. I don't like it in particular, but I'm sure there are things that I say that other people dislike. That's both of our rights. Okay. Gang members, they can absolutely get together in public. Nobody can stop them from hanging out. All right. We can stop them from, robbing somebody or beating someone up. Again, that's where you cross into action and you're doing something to harm somebody else. That's never okay. All right. What you cannot do, you cannot protest by throwing rocks and breaking windows. That's not called protesting. That's called being an angry mob. You cannot hang out on my front yard, my private property, against my will. If I tell you to move, you best move. You cannot violate teen curfew. Sorry, guys, you got to be home at a certain time. All right. So, Congress shall make no law abridging the people to petition the government for redress of grievances. I know we talk like this all of the time. Basically, this means if you see something that's wrong that the government's done, I can say, hey, government, I think you need to fix this. And sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, but I'm allowed to talk to my government officials and get them to try and fix something that's wrong. So I can sue the government for wrongs. That's one way to get their attention, is to sue them and say, hey, you did this thing and I don't like it. And I think that you're not allowed to do it. So I'm going to sue you. And you cannot be punished for suing the government or showing how they did something wrong. The courts, that whole court system, decides who's right and who's wrong. Remember, this was a huge problem with the Articles of Confederation, that we didn't have a way to decide these things. Now we do. All right, so take a deep breath. That was the First Amendment. Okay, so the rest of them will go a lot faster. The Second Amendment, this one is the one that gets tons of attention. All right, so the whole Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the whole thing. It's a pretty short sentence. Okay, so here's the debate. How much can the government keep guns from criminals and from youth and other just people who should or shouldn't have them? And then, in order to keep guns away from criminals, does that limit regular people, their rights to be able to have government? Okay. So that's kind of the two sides of these debates. We don't want weapons of any kind, guns or anything else, in the hands of people who are going to do bad things, but we can't keep them out of the hands of regular people who aren't doing anything wrong. So I can make a case on either side. Thousands of people die every year because of guns, and thousands of crimes are prevented every year because of guns. Okay. Now, one last thing about the Second Amendment. If we say that we can't have any limits on it, well, that's just craziness, because we have laws for every single thing. So we're allowed to drive, but there's a speed limit. We are allowed to say what we want to say until we threaten somebody with physical harm. So Second Amendment is no different than any of the other amendments. You're allowed to do certain things, but there are limits. If you're allowed to do whatever you want, whenever you want, that's called anarchy, and no society is going to work when you have anarchy. Okay. All right. Third Amendment. The government cannot force you to shelter soldiers in your home without your consent in times of war or peace. Okay. So basically, what that last one was is when the American Revolution was happening, the king sent a bunch of soldiers over. He didn't want to have to build places for them to stay. So the people in cities were forced to take in soldiers, and they got to live in those houses. People had to feed those soldiers. They weren't always nice, and the people of America said, we don't ever want that to happen again. This is why we have military bases. Then we build them wherever we have a need to have them. And that's where our soldiers and their families will stay. They don't have to room with you or I. They can stay on government housing for the military. Okay. All right. Rights of the accused. So if you get accused of a crime, this is what amendments 4 through 8 have to deal with. All right. So the Fourth Amendment. This means that a police officer, in order to search your home, they cannot just walk up and search it. They actually have to have something called a warrant. Okay. Now, this comes from, remember those things called writs of assistance from way back when, where people could just walk up and search your boat and search whatever they wanted to with no proof? Well, that's where the Fourth Amendment comes into place. Can't do it. Okay. So a warrant has to be given to a police officer by a judge, and that police officer has to show the judge there's a good reason why you're searching for something. Okay. And you have to have that probable cause. You have to have that reason. It can't just be because I'm the police officer and the judge is a buddy of mine and I want to search through Adrielle's stuff. So, hey, let me go search. Nope. The judge is going to say, well, why should you be able to search through Adrielle's stuff? And if I can't give a good enough reason, then I don't get the warrant. Okay. So the Fifth Amendment, this one is famous for a couple of things. So there's been tons of movies and TV shows done about the idea of double jeopardy. So basically that means if I went and I killed, Miss Gordon. I would never do that, but just let's say I did. And they put me on trial for her murder, and the jury found me not guilty. Didn't do it. Well, let's say later on, somebody got mad that I did not get charged with or didn't get put in jail for that crime, and so they want to put me on trial again. Well, they can't do that. I already had my trial. They didn't like the outcome. Too bad, so sad. They can't put me on trial again. The only reason that you can't do that is if something got messed up in that trial. If somebody lied or there's new evidence, then you can have another trial. But just because you don't like the answer the jury gave is not a good reason to have another trial. Okay. You also don't have to testify against yourself. Basically, you don't have to rat yourself out. So if somebody asks you, hey, Sam, did you steal that $1,000? And if you don't want to say one thing or another, you say, I plead the fifth, meaning I'm not admitting to anything. And even if I did do it, I'm not going to tell on myself. Okay. I know you wish that your parents allowed this to happen, but they don't. You still have to tell the truth. Now, you must have something called due process of law. So basically, I can't throw you in jail and just throw away the key and never let you know why you're arrested, never give you a trial. You have to actually have a trial. You have to have a defense that are going to be there to try and make sure that you have all of the things that the other side has in order to be able to give you the best chance of not going to jail. Okay? Because remember, in this country, you're innocent until proven guilty. So the government has to be the one to prove you guilty. And then the government cannot take your land unless it pays you. And they can't pay you like $5 for like 30 acres. There's a fancy term for this called eminent domain, where the government can take things from people, but they have to compensate you and they have to give you what it's worth. They can't just decide themselves. All right, Sixth Amendment. Now, how many of you guys, I'm sure, look like the people in this painting right now? Yep, I'm the guy yawning in the corner. All right, the Sixth Amendment. You have to basically get a trial, and you get to have a trial, and the people who make up the jury, they can't have anything for or against you. They basically have to hopefully just like not know anything, and then that way, when we give them all of the information, they get to make up their mind, and they don't think you're awesome, they don't think you're a jerk. They just get to decide those things. Okay. So that's what a trial is. They also can't keep you in jail for like 1,000 years and then give you a trial after you're dead. You have to get a trial in a relatively short period of time. All right. You have to be told when you're arrested, what are you being charged with? There are some places in the world, even today, where someone can come in, arrest you, put you in jail, never tell you why, never give you a trial, and you are just stuck in jail. Okay. Now, if any of you guys are like, well, that's a bunch of crap. Well, yeah, that's why we have this thing called the Sixth Amendment, because in other places that does happen, even today. That would actually be really terrifying if you stopped and thought about it. Okay. And you get a lawyer because most of us are not lawyers. So you get a lawyer even if you can't afford one, because it's kind of like saying, oh, well, you're sick. You need to have an operation, but you're going to have to do the operation yourself. No, that would end terribly. So you get somebody to be able to give you that operation. You get somebody to be your lawyer so that they can do things the proper way so that you have the best chance of not going to jail. All right, Seventh Amendment. You get a jury trial. I'm also getting a lot of text messages, but you get a jury trial. Um, if you have at least $20 at stake. Now, that was written, a couple hundred years ago. So that $20 equals about $500 today. So if something happens, somebody steals something from you and it's at least $500, you can take them to court. Okay. The Eighth Amendment, this one is also really gets a lot of attention. There's no excessive bail. So if I steal a pack of gum, your bail cannot be $1 million to get out of jail. Okay. You also, and this is the part that gets a lot of attention, no cruel and unusual punishment. No, homework doesn't count as cruel and unusual punishment. This lecture does not count as cruel and unusual punishment. Some people argue that the death penalty is cruel and unusual, that the government should not be able to take your life away from you, right? Because you can't undo that. So there's a big debate one way or the other. Right now, there are some states that allow the death penalty. There are other states that do not. Okay. Indiana does allow the death penalty, but there are some ways that you cannot kill people, according to like state governments. All right. We can't do firing squad anymore. We're not allowed to hang people anymore. We're not allowed to electrocute people anymore. We have to usually do lethal injection is usually the way that people are put to death when they're in prison. Okay, so but this is the thing that goes round and around. There's lots of different things that fall under cruel and unusual. We can't torture people just for fun or really at all. So that falls under the Eighth Amendment. Okay, we're almost done, guys. Ninth Amendment. Okay, so I'm going to read it and then I'm going to explain it. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. That sounds confusing to me, and I'm the teacher. What it actually means is this. You can't get rid of laws and can't get rid of rights that people already have. Right now, I am in my pajamas. I am lecturing to you in my PJs, and it's my right to be able to wear whatever I want to wear. And basically, the Constitution cannot say that, nope, I'm not allowed to wear pajamas. Okay? So, if you already have that right, can't take it away from you. I've got 2 kids. I'm allowed to have children. That is something that Mr. Tom and I decided to do, and we did it, and they drive me crazy, and I love them all at the same time. Constitution can't take away that right. Okay? That is, I can't take away somebody else's right. All right. Last one. So basically, it's this the stuff that the federal government, like the US national government, doesn't have control over, well, the states have control over. So if the Constitution says the federal government can do something, they get to do it. Duh. But if the Constitution says nothing about it, so if we wanted to say chocolate is the official snack of Indiana, well, that's not in the Constitution. So that would mean that Indiana, the state, gets to decide that. And right now, you guys are going through a lot of the 10th Amendment because this whole Corona deal is there's a lot of things that the states are doing. There's some things that the federal government are saying that we can and cannot do. There are other things that the state is saying that we can and cannot do. That's why the rules in Indiana are a little different than the rules other places. So far, only Kansas and Indiana have suspended schools. Kansas all year long, and Indiana until May 1st. So after that, all the other states, they're still either going to school or doing something a little different than what we're doing. Okay. All right. That's it. That's everything. So now you got something to do. Check out Canvas.